drifting has a great correlation to like action sports. And that's why I think the early days we grabbed a much younger audience than traditional racing, is because they understood that. Like they weren't worrying about like, oh my gosh, 2 milliseconds faster. Most people fell in love with more of the aggressiveness of the driving.
Drifting has kind of opened the doors for a lot of people. Like if you take away the whole prestige side, that high-end stuff that some people just simply cannot get into, drifting just kicked the door down and said, we're coming in, we're going to burn tires. So many people just are all about that. And even if they never hit a track, who doesn't like to smoke their tires up?
Welcome back to another episode of Modify with Trick Factory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim? Rob?
Yes, and we have an amazing guest today. He has so many titles. It's pretty wild what he's done for the motorsports community. It's pretty amazing. Co-founder of Formula Drift. What? Like, that is so wild. And now he's currently at PRI. So you can introduce yourself and then we'll dive right in, Jim.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm Jim Liaw. I am the co-founder of Formula Drift, and currently I'm the general manager of PRI.
How did you even get started in this world? Like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A lot of the things I have done or do or is doing is somewhat behind the scenes, so appreciate the credit there. I think like anybody else, as a car enthusiast as a kid, fell in love with cars even before I drove. And I had the fortune of kind of growing up around a bunch of people that, guys that were older than me that were already modifying cars, and got to really see the import scene kind of in the early days here in Southern California. And after college, I just had, I think me in summary is just like, it's been a series of kind of fortunate opportunities. A lot of it, maybe some persistent digging. It wasn't really kind of handed, but I really was fortunate. I mean, really, it started off with an internship at a company called McMullen Argus, which has morphed through different acquisitions and whatnot into what is Motor Trend Group today. So I interned for the international group that's for European Car and Sport Compact Car magazine, for those that go that far back. And that was kind of like my first foray into the industry. I've never been to the SEMA show. I didn't know about the SEMA show. I knew nothing about advertising and marketing. And that internship kind of opened my eyes to the business world of what we're all involved in today. And from there it was, hey, you're this junior kid, you got to go out there and pound the streets. So, sent me out to events, and I sat at the booth and selling subscriptions and collecting data on all the different magazines that we competed with. The company had, a bunch of other titles. So I got exposed to everything from modified Harley Davidsons to trucks and street rods and mini trucks and all the different parts of our industry. From there, I went to a couple of different event companies. I thought events were super dynamic. I was young. I was like, this is great. Be on the road, be out at racetracks. Worked for a company called IDRC, which does import drag racing, was part of that series for a couple of years. Moved on to a company called Vision Entertainment, which created and ran Hot Import Nights. And at that time, it was the peak of the car show scene, and had sponsors from all across the board and non-automotive. I thought that was a great learning opportunity, but they were also wanting to get into kind of more hardcore motorsports, and that was my background. So went there for a number of years. And then that's where I met Ryan Sage, which is my partner in Formula Drift. We started a marketing company thinking that, well, we did. We serviced a lot of, endemic companies, right? We serviced a lot of SEMA companies, part manufacturers that were looking to be kind of better marketers and to do better in activations. They were investing in events like Hot Import Nights and IDRC and Battle Imports and everything else. But we felt like there wasn't a connection. Like there's something missing. They were spending money getting involved, but their presence on site was just not speaking to the audience. And there was a disconnect, and we thought we could help them. And so that agency was really to service that. And there's a lot of kind of boutique specialty agencies that have popped up since then. But again, fortunate to have done that, and really fortunate was because we're so involved in the aftermarket scene, and especially the Japanese aftermarket scene. A lot of the JDM companies knew us, worked with us, and kind of endorsed us and said, "Hey, this group that's running this series called D1, which is the original drifting series, is looking to come to the U.S. They wanted to do it as kind of like a publicity stunt, like an exhibition race." And they're looking for a marketing and operations partner to run it for them. They don't need help with the drifting part. They just need help trying to get people to come out and to attend and to put on an event essentially. So we did that for them. That was August of 2003. So it was announced at the Tokyo Auto Salon in January 2003. We worked for almost a year to kind of educate the public of what it is. We produced what we thought was a really good event. I think it really kind of sparked American interest in drifting. And then, we went back to them and said, this is really good. I think we're onto something here. American drivers want to participate and do this. They've been watching what you guys have done for years, and they want something here. Unfortunately, they said no. They said that, they're owned by and not to get into too deep into the weeds, but that formed our philosophy a little bit for Formula Drift. Like they're a media company that put on a motorsport event to feed content to their media properties. They weren't really looking at it as a formal sport with really formal rules and regs and this and that. So they said, we'll come back when we think the time is right. Maybe another publicity stunt or when we feel the need to. So no, thank you. We don't want a joint venture partner license anything to you guys. So hey, we'll call you again if we come back. And it's like there's like no way. We spent like nearly a year telling everybody what this new thing is, what drifting is, and we're finally like, oh great, we checked a big box, and they're like, nah, we'll come back later. So we respectfully said, well, look, if you're not going to do this, I think we're going to start our own series here.
Nice.
And they said, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
And so we did. So that was August. It was like mid-August 2003. We were probably having this conversation, early mid-September 2003. And again, the fortunes of us, keeping really good relationships. We went back to the sponsors of the event, some of the companies that we worked with. And part of a lot of our projects is we had great contacts with some racetracks. And without them, I don't think it would have happened. They were really supportive, racetracks like Irwindale Speedway and Road Atlanta opened their doors and said, yeah, let's do it.
Wow.
Let's help you get started. And by November of 2003, we went to the SEMA show and announced that we were going to start Formula Drift.
So cool.
That following April of 2004 was our first year. We kicked it off at Road Atlanta, and I guess the rest is somewhat history. Now, this is 2005. This will be the start of the 22nd season.
That's insane.
Formula Drift. So that's it's really cool. I mean, I think we again, I think the timing was great. It was by no genius on our part, but social media was taking off. So we rode that. We were one of the first to live stream. We were all over social media. We were lucky that the American, motorsports industry was really mature in sports marketing and sponsorships and how to activate and find drivers and so forth. We we're doing everything obviously in English, and there's a predominant part of the world that understands, speaks English versus say Japanese.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
So
I have a question for you. Speaking of the English part, like that language barrier, for example, did you get people applying or coming from all over the world, or was it just, did you leave it open and it was like, hey, anyone that wants to come join us, or was just a strictly US based thing?
we probably weren't as thoughtful or strategic in the early years. I think we were like, like we were just like running around with like, our pants on fire kind of thing. And it just grew really fast. And I think, when we're referring to like English, I think that was kind of the catalyst, right? Is that once the internet opened wide because of social media, because of Facebook and YouTube, once we were able to get, kind of 4G, 5G technology and able to stream very easily and products like GoPros and things like that, and it obviously eventually led to like drone footage and so forth, we're able to do things that we wouldn't have been able to do if we're trying to do a traditional, let's broadcast on cable TV, let's put in-car cameras on these cars and fly a helicopter to get an aerial footage. Like there would be no way we could do it. But because we were where we were, had the funding, support, sponsorships that we did, and the internet opening up and broadcasting in English, we kind of sparked all kinds of things that happened.
Yeah.
There's, drifting in Australia, New Zealand,
crazy.
all over Europe, Africa, wherever that has a easier bridge, into English, those markets all opened up.
So cool.
And everybody started doing drifting all over the world. And again, because where we are, your question is like, we didn't say, hey, drifters from around the world come here. They just did, because if I win the, New Zealand championship or the Irish championship 5 years in a row, 4 year, whatever it is, multiple times, I hit my peak. But I'm in Ireland and I have a 5 million person population. I'm in New Zealand. I have a 4.5 million person population. I mean, you come to LA County and it's more than 4 million people. You know what I mean? So
just makes
the
sense.
opportunities for these drivers naturally became here.
That's so wild. When was the first or the third Fast and Furious? When was Tokyo Drift? I'm trying to.
We
were came first.
We were after the first Fast and Furious, but we were before Tokyo Drift. And what was really cool is that, the early days, the Reese Millen, Samuel Hubernet, Tanner Faust, they came from a lot of commercial driving background. So they brought a level of kind of driving accuracy, being able to place a car, and then mixing that with drifting and drifting culture and the sport. And so, those guys were working on movie sets and commercials all the time. And Reese was one of the lead stunt coordinators for Tokyo Drift. And it turned out a lot of the, traditional Hollywood stunt drivers just couldn't pull off because they wanted to do not CGI driving, but actual driving. So, there were drivers that were stuck. They couldn't do it. And so Reese actually pulled probably like a dozen FD drivers to go drive in the movie. So even like that scene where, the red Evo's kind of going up,
left in the garage. Yes.
That was Reese on one tape
insane.
in Long Beach, in a parking structure in Long Beach.
What?
And
One take.
It's cool. Like, and those drivers were, the guys that he brought in actually they were young. He opened them up to this whole opportunity to subsidize income, where, a lot of them today still do a ton of commercial driving.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so exciting when you talk about like opportunities that were there that you grabbed, and that momentum and just like the timing of the whole thing. Just aligned so beautifully. And I think like with the onset of like social media and that whole marketing strategy, wow, like I just get excited thinking and hearing this story, because it just aligns so beautifully. and what you've created, you and your co-founder, and for the industry and the culture is absolutely staggering now.
Yeah.
To think about what you've done.
It wouldn't have been easy, especially back in that era. Like, if you look at from that time, looking at drifting from the outside looking in is like, it's the opposite of motorsport. It's such a like, it's so counterintuitive, everything about it. So how did those racetracks, like, I've been to a bunch of tracks and there's definitely a culture there. Like, how did the transition into like, hey, check this out? There must have been some dudes on the sideline that is like, okay, that everything is wrong with that. Like, everything you're doing is like, that's the slowest possible way to go around a track. So like that transition, like, must have been a hard sell in the beginning, or did they just jump right in?
Oh, absolutely. It was a hard sell. You know, like you're saying, like you guys are earlier, like around that time. I mean, again, I it's just kind of fortunate that things you do or things you learn or your whatever your habits are really from like kind of life experiences. Like granted, we were like in our mid late 20s, so we were still pretty young in a sense, right? But this was on the decline of import drag racing. This was kind of sort of at the peak of import car shows. And we learned from both of those, like the pros and cons of what you did right, did wrong, what we wanted to do, what we didn't want to do. And then being in in Southern California too, we also had a huge influence from action sports. So skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding were part of our our daily lives. And Ryan, that's at one point, he actually wanted to be a professional snowboarder. So he was living in Lake Tahoe, just kind of riding. So we bring some of those like different thoughts together. And so when you say like, yeah, like, drifting, it has a great correlation to like action sports. And that's why I also think that the early days, why young people were, we grabbed a much younger audience than traditional racing, is because they understood that. Like, they weren't, worrying about like, oh my gosh, like 2 milliseconds faster. I mean, that's cool. And yes, somebody, a driver winning is good. And, all that's fine. But there was a part of drifting that was, anybody, you may not know the sport, you may not understand the rules of judging or whatever, but I would think that most people can go and they watch a run and like, oh yeah, that guy didn't really, that wasn't really smooth. That was not a great run, right? I think most people can kind of feel that, and that's just kind of the sense of like, oh, stylistically, it was good or he's bad, and so there was a large group of fans that understood drifting, or understood judging, that the subjective part of that sport, and they just kind of fell in love with more of the aggressiveness of the driving, and then maybe the characters of the drivers, versus like the sheer awe of the car. Obviously, cars have evolved a lot since then. But yeah, you're saying like tracks, like, yeah, no, there were plenty of tracks. And I say all the action sports stuff is because, I didn't grow up in it, but I knew of it. Like ski resorts didn't allow for snowboarding. And it's similar where it's like, no, you guys can't bring your cars onto this track. Like, our track is way too pristine. For you, like, you guys are just gonna cause a mess and all that. But there were those that were more bold, and maybe those that were not your tier 1 facilities that were like, what, we're here to do business. If you guys are bringing a different audience, I need to fill my calendar. And if you guys are not, if you guys are well behaved, you pay your bills, and bring it. And we did, and more facilities like it. And as you guys probably see now, there's tons of tracks that have just local drifting, and they're open to that. There's still a number of tracks that won't have it, but there's definitely a lot more. Majority will.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what track I was at, because I used to live in SoCal, actually. And there was a track I went to. I'm trying to think of which one of the tracks, but it was like not a long time ago, but I would say 10 years, almost 10 years ago now. And I went there initially. They were like, no drifting, no this, no that. Like they had all the things, but it was pretty cool to see as the time went on. Like they eventually accepted it, and it was like, and it became one of the big drift tracks actually for the community around the area there. So it's really cool to see everything you guys have been able to contribute. Like that blows my mind of the acceptance, first of all, like how many hoops you guys had to even jump through. Like that's just wild.
We just think about like how much more accessible the car culture, learning about cars, getting into cars, everything has gotten. Drifting has kind of opened the doors for a lot of people. Like if you take away the whole prestige sort of side, that high end circuit track kind of stuff that some people just simply cannot get into for whatever reason, drifting just kind of like opened that door. It's like kick the door down instead. We're coming in, we're gonna burn tires, and like so many people just are all about that. And even if they never hit a track, who doesn't like to smoke their tires off? Like honestly, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know of a major channel that was all about just burning tires off.
What I love about drifting, it's not a high speed sport, so you don't have to like. It's way less dangerous.
Cost of entry,
Yeah,
and the cost of
way
exit
less.
is a lot less expensive as well.
Isn't that crazy, right? Like I think the visceral part of drifting throws people off and like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But really, you're right. It's not like, aside from for fun when you're having a pack of, kind of a drift train at the track because you and your buddies want to go drive around the track together. I mean, in competition form, when people are, drivers are getting really heated, like there's no more than 2 cars on the track at once.
Yeah.
And it looks fast. And at some, Road Atlanta coming down,
You kind of get up to the speeds there.
those speeds get high, right? Get, low 100s. But aside from that, you're not really, like imagine, right? Like if you're an Indy car or NASCAR, you're going, almost 200 miles an hour in a pack of 30. That's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to another podcast, and even in a casual track day, some of these cars that are out there, and this guy just kind of went off, and it's like, that's $35,000 damage.
Yeah.
This is $60,000 damage. You go off in that thing, and it's probably $80, and let's get back in it and go. And then getting into it is so cheap too. It's like
Pretty awesome.
like a fun thing to do. Like we have one here that we play with, and it was like thousands of dollars, and you can get started. So it's like, it's pretty cool, an easy thing to get into. It's like, it's fun.
That's like the trying to convey to people that are into other forms of racing, or even companies and other series, is that there's people always kind of like feel that there's like a takeaway, right? It's like, oh, if they come, something's lost. I don't think drifting or Formula Drift has ever looked at it that way. I think it's more of an ad, right? It's an ad too, because you're right. Like the open, like these young, and I keep saying young, but like that's really the predominant demographic, right? In comparison to other forms of racing, these young people that come and watch drifting, whatever, local to professional, a lot of them are first time at a racetrack. So they've never been to your little dirt track or circle. I mean, not dirt track, but your circle track or your local, go-kart track, whatever it is. They've never been there. And they may not even been into motorsports until drifting. And you just look at these drivers as an example. You look at, highest exposure FD drivers. A lot of them came in, all they knew was drifting. They did drifting, they became professionals in drifting. But because of that, it opened the doors into all kinds of other things where they're rock crawling, they're off-roading. I mean, you've got FD drivers doing the Baja 1000.
Yeah.
Like it opens them into all forms of racing. And I think that is, it's parallel to the audience as well, where oh, cool, I've been to a track. I kind of know how a racetrack works. All right. Okay, maybe I'll go try that, NASCAR race next weekend. Maybe I'll go to IndyCar race. Maybe I'll go to local dirt track race. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like, it's your, it's kind of like your like little gateway drug
Yeah,
into the
into
racing
other forms of
world.
racing.
You were brought into drifting, and then you're like, okay, let's see what else there is. It's not oh, drifting took a fan away from something, and now that group has lost a person, and drifting has gained a person. No, all those groups have actually probably gained because all these young people or new people to racing have come in through drifting and now are either participants or ticket buyers to all these other things that are happening.
Oh, 100%. That actually reminded me of, so for example, like my wife has never been interested in any form of racing before until when you were talking of that's like a gateway to other forms of racing. Formula One, like the Netflix show, like that started like a thing, and so many people became passionate about multiple forms of racing, her included. Like now she would actually go with me to like a drift whatever competition, or even like a track day just to watch it. And before, she would have never even thought about comprehending the fact of just sitting there watching cars go around the track multiple times. And so I think, yeah, you're very correct. Like just like the same way, or in a similar way of the way the Formula One show on Netflix introduced multiple people to multiple forms of racing as the gateway. I think drifting is the same thing. It's like, it's pretty much just helping. It's not hindering, it's only helping the other forms of motorsport, I think.
The key to it is like drifting brought the gate to you.
Yeah.
Because it's probably like the only form of motorsports that I can think of off the top of my head, other than like little tiny demonstrations where it's like, it's in a parking lot behind an event.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have to travel out. Like they brought it to you, got you hooked, and then you start to go out for
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool jumping off point because you can.
Well, you were saying, right, it's like it's accessible because when we were, I remember we would do a lot of demos and things like that, and then you go to the next trailer, and then these teams and mechanics from other series, and we're like, oh, how much is one of those things? How much is it to build one of those? Like, and they're just shocked, right? That a tier 1 pro car costs, in comparison to what they're doing on a regional level, that's a the low barrier of entry helps. The even the scalability, like you're saying, like we do granted it's not always the best, but you could do a demonstration, a entry level, a track day kind of experience, a ride along in a pretty small, like, contained area. And a lot of times that's adjoining to like other events. And so the ability to kind of move it or to place drifting anywhere, or even like at a racetrack, it's like, oh yeah, like, when we found, missions at the Long Beach Grand Prix, it was like, oh, hey, there's a set of turns here that seems to kind of work. Can we use, this? So there's like things like that where it's like there's parts of really big racetracks, there's like areas, there's open space, like the scalability and adaptability of the track itself, lends to being able to bring that gate to you.
So
it's so crazy. And like I think about like the timeline of like when FD started, 2003. If you think about like how that actually, the impact that's had on the aftermarket industry, I'm imagining like there's like direct correlation there, because that was a time when a lot of things were like, pretty high priced, almost unobtainable, very, very limited. We think back many times, like you if you could even afford it, or if you could even get it. And like, just imagine how this all plays into PRI now that you're general managing that. And it's just, it's so amazing. Like I'm just seeing these vibes kind of coming together here.
Yeah.
Those are just, I mean, like, those are just fortunate kind of like life lessons. Like, we looked at, again, like it wasn't by genius of anybody's part, but, a few years in, we kind of look back and like, you look at FD, and as drifting was kind of gaining momentum, import drag racing was kind of on the decline because of again, lessons like decisions series operators made that kind of drew it down. I mean, it never went away. It's still pretty healthy in certain parts of the country, but on its kind of like national decline. But what drifting offered was on a business side is kind of like, the availability of these brands. Like, you're kind of selling the same things. You're just rebranding them or selling them to a different group, right? So if I'm buying a particular brand of whatever, wheels, exhaust, suspension, I bought it for drag racing, I bought it for road racing, I bought it, whatever. And I think we didn't mean it in that way, but I think the benefit of drifting coming in at that time for companies is that, man, I'm seeing slumping sales to a group of people that are Nissan enthusiasts. Man, what do I do? Oh, there's another group of Nissan enthusiasts, but they're doing something different. I can market or tweak my parts to be able to sell to this group. And I think I think we made an impact that way, to be able to help the industry, those that were looking for other areas to sell without having to develop something completely right. You weren't making coilovers for track days, and then now you got to try to find like, oh, I'm making them for like off-road racing, desert racing, suspension. Like they're like slightly different, right? And you were talking about PRI. I kind of bring that thinking to PRI, and I think trying to evangelize and convey that is that you go to the PRI show, and you can go to a lot of races, and a lot of business is done at races, a lot of networking is done at races, no doubt about that. But you go to a PRI show, there's no way you can go to one place, spend 2-3 days, and be able to see the cross pollination of technologies, quarter midgets, what you need for a quarter midget, to a short course off-road truck, to a drifting car, to an open wheel race car, and everything and anything, in between. And that's how, that's kind of that opportunity for companies is there. Like, you never thought about that, right? People that were, making, whatever, like, G-force transmissions or, Winters, and these companies that are really established, say in drag racing, didn't realize or didn't really know that drifters were kind of looking for that solution. They were, drive shop. I just came back from an overseas trip, and it's like people were spending, whatever, 15 grand on the sequential transmission. They were spending $5 grand on the rear end, and then they didn't really think, because either they didn't know in that market, they didn't have the experience. Like, oh, drag racers have, they're snapping drive shafts. Oh, drag racers have already solved that. So like, let's, so it's like piecing these things and technologies and things like that together, and that helps them, right? Because maybe I'm making drive shafts, and my customer base is like 95% drag racers. I just have found a whole new group of people that I can sell to. That's great for the industry to be able to know that I have a solution or a part or something that I've already solved, and somebody else has just seen what I did, and now I'm able to do more, to sell more, to spread that technology to more places.
It's similar to SEMA. Like, I'm just thinking of SEMA when we're talking of even just seeing so many different companies and people at one location. It's pretty amazing. But we've been going to SEMA now for a few years, and even like this year when we're at SEMA, it was so amazing to be able to actually talk to these people or sponsors or people that we're going to end up working with in the future. But PRI, I feel like, has also been amazing at so much of this. I think it's more specialized.
Well, it's definitely more specialized, more focused, and I'd say a little more hardcore, I guess. Like, we're PRI members, so it's like that's kind of where you go when you want to start getting really serious. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, PRI is a all motorsports racing trade show. The exhibitors are all kind of part makers or service providers for all things racing, any kind of race car, race series, even things for racetracks and for facilities, right? Like timing, soaring, software, things like that. We're I guess the sister sibling organization to SEMA, and SEMA covers the full kind of gamut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All things on four wheels with a motor, classic to new, domestic to international, all styles and all parts, restoration and repair to the modification and performance. That's SEMA for you. And then we become the hyper focused
Yeah.
of the industry, where it's literally it's racing. Like it is. You want to find something to bend pipe, to fabricate a roll cage, come to the PRI show, right?
Yeah.
You need telemetry for your race car. It's at the PRI show.
Yeah.
You need that sequential transmission, you come to the PRI show.
Yeah.
And you want to see what different forms of racing are installing, what their cars look like, and what kind of technologies are being used. Are they similar to what you need or whatever? PRI show.
Yeah. How did that transition happen for you, though, from Formula Drift? Or are you still involved in Formula Drift at all? Or is it just that you're just PRI right now?
Yeah. So as a co-founder, so I still have, my stake, my part in Formula Drift. It's still kind of my baby. I'm not doing that day to day, though. I'm still on the board, and we'll check in on the team from time to time. How I ended up here at PRI is, kind of interesting, but same thing. I think, I just been fortunate. When certain doors close, others open. I as FD and drifting kind of matured in the industry, and it has become, more respected, and realized that it's not a fad like many people have said it would have been. I volunteer for a number of, SEMA councils, and participated and wanted to, give back, right? Like to offer what the experience that we had in bringing young people into the audience, which means it's good for the industry as a whole, and to try to bring some of that experience to the kind of a SEMA, association and committee. And I thought that I think it was 2018, maybe 19. And I was like, well, look, let's see if I could do that on a bigger and higher level. And that was to run for SEMA board of directors. Unfortunately, I think the board of director seats are kind of different categories of business, and events fall under kind of a service category, which means media. If you're representing a media company, other event or series organizers, agencies, that all kind of fall into that. So there's a lot of really well experienced people that kind of fall into that category, which is one seat. And I ran, kind of not knowing how to do all that, and like how do I get votes and so forth. So a little bit naive in kind of walking into that, but I thought, hey, I could contribute that way if kind of I had a seat at the table. Ran for board of directors, didn't make it. So I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And I think at that time, there were some restructuring and strategizing on the PRI side of the business, in kind of positions that were opening up, and there was kind of this looking for a general manager seat to kind of bridge leadership with the team that kind of runs all parts of PRI. And then the pandemic happened, and so I think all that went to pause. But after the pandemic, we came back. FD was one of the few series that did anything during 2020, and I think that went really well. And I think globally, it was a good thing too, because I think we were one of 2, maybe 3 series that still ran, and we did at anything. Like, it was the craziest year of, every day you wake up to something different.
Yeah.
And FD ran a 2020 season with all kinds of COVID restrictions. Every state is different. Some no fans, some distance, some limited. It was nuts.
Wow.
But we put content out, and so I felt like we accomplished something by surviving 2020. 21 was the biggest year on record.
Wow.
And I was like, oh man, like, we went through something crazy. And around kind of towards the end of 21, there were some conversations about, hey, what would you want to, maybe in similar fashion to your desire to be on the board, to maybe be in the association, side of it, and join the PRI team and the SEMA team.
Nice.
And I thought, well, I thought it was a great opportunity for me personally to venture into something different, to actually do a lot of learning. I've learned a lot in the, 3.5 years I've been here.
Wow.
But also that, FD was in a great place. Ryan, kind of took over the helm of what I do. And, obviously we were running things side by side. So there was no doubt in the team, in the series. I wouldn't have transitioned if I felt like it was like, oh, I'm bailing on the team. But they were on a great trajectory. And, and this is where, I think a lot of people, kind of fall into the ego of like, oh, look what I did. I left and things fell apart, right? I don't look at it that way. I think you want to leave something you want it to grow more than how you left it.
Yeah.
That's really
100%.
That's really a testament of like, oh, you helped build something to a point where it can continue to grow, rather it be all about you, right? So 22 and 23 everybody thought 21 spike was post-COVID, and then it would come back to reality. I mean, look at IndyCar, look at IMSA, look at anything like tier 1 down, where everybody saw a spike in 21, and almost everybody saw it continue, which is crazy. and FD is the same, where we thought 21 was a stellar year, and then 22 everybody's ready, like, all right, let's go back to kind of a little bit of reality. But it's continued in 23, the same thing. So great for the team there and what they're doing, and the job that they're doing. And same thing, we came in 2020, SEMA and PRI didn't have a show. 21 was kind of like a cold start, bringing everybody back. And 21, 22, 23, now the 24 show have all been steadily increasing in growth and momentum. And PRI is in a great place. We've brought some cool things into the show, evolved it without leaving anything behind, or adding to it,
so cool,
versus replacing or taking away.
Have you drifted? Or like, I'm actually curious because, what is have you ever?
How could you not be?
Drifter. Because you're involved in founding Formula Drift. So I would be like, yo, this guy is the freaking best drifter on the planet or something.
If I was, I probably wouldn't be doing this, right? No, I mean, I've driven. I'm not a good drifter by any means. And my pitch to you is that there's some truth to it. But it's really that I've always been kind of like a fan. Maybe a fanboy-ish at some point, but like more of a fan. And I think in what we've done has really been fan focused. And I think about all the time, whether it's now that the person that's paying the $40 annual membership and is coming to the PRI show, or that 20-year-old that spent $40 to buy a seat at Irwindale Speedway. What is it that they want? what will draw what can we do to provide a great experience for that person, and enough that it leaves something residual where they want to come back, or they want to join the industry, or they want to become a fan of the sport, or whatever it is. That's a really important part for me, is that, yeah, I mean, if you want me to tear down and rebuild a race car, I couldn't do it for you. But I think that's important, though, is appreciating people that can do that,
100%.
and finding a way to preserve and support that. And I think, in my previous experience, where sometimes where you have ex drivers, and this is what I saw in, again, my experience, someone's experience is completely different. They just bring a lot more biases, right? In how it should be, how the driving should be, how the judging should be, and really forget, are really in the mind of a maybe a driver or a competitor, and they forget that it's really not about you, unfortunately. It's how you get your bills paid, is to make sure those people in the stands really buy into what you do and really enjoy what you're doing, right? Just like same thing with you have a great shop. You want to retain your customer. You're not just trying to get that, one sale or one build, and then it's like, off you go. I'm going to build it my way. I don't care what you want. I'm going to build it, and I'm going to install what I want to install. I'm not listening to you, the customer. It's like you gotta. There's that the value or the importance of that, realizing that and having that kind of interaction. And granted, it's not like, oh, whatever the fans say goes. There's some sort of like, hey, we're area experts and the sport needs to evolve in this way, and we need to add this and that or whatever. Or same thing, PRI and associations. Like, there are some things that we need to be really good listeners.
Yeah.
And there's some parts where we have to be really good area experts to make sure that we're going down the right path.
There must have been like some form of, they must recognize at some point how valuable you are to the industry. Because like, even for me, I was the kid at the newsstand waiting for Sport Compact magazine. So I bought the first copy, and then we were at night market buying drift videos from
so
like
funny.
overseas and watching them in Japanese. And then, so like this entire timeline and progressing. And then now we're building SEMA cars and doing big builds, and we're going to PRI and all this kind of stuff. Like this entire timeline, you were on the back side of it, making sure you're aware of all these things. So it's like, it's a huge part of the industry, but I don't think it's necessarily appreciated. So, I mean, I thank you for that.
Seriously.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really did.
I do video primarily for the most part, and do a lot of the things at the shop, but they are the builders. But still, I'm still like, oh, what would it be like to drive this car or build this car? And I was just curious to see if you like had any like fun toys, or if you had actually like driven or all of that, because it's one thing to also to do what you do with the administrative side of things and the business side of things. But I was like, sometimes I'm like, that car looks like it would be amazing to rip. And so I'm like,
It's got to go both ways, because like as a business owner, we're always looking like, okay, what are these guys doing? Like, I'm looking into your industry to do our thing better. And I have an appreciation for it. So it's got to come the other way too.
Well, sometimes it's like, I don't know if you guys are way more hands-on, right? Like, I don't know if you guys see that, where it's like, you see all these people kind of active in the industry, and you're like, I need to make more time to really be more into the industry that I am involved in. And I think there's a little bit of frustration in me sometimes, where it's like, man, I'm just so consumed in what we're doing, where it's like, when's the last time I been out on a track and, worked on a car and all that kind of stuff. I still am in some forms, like, BMW enthusiast.
Oh, nice.
And then it was a horrible story where, I bought an E30, like 325 IS, and I had it for a little bit, and I was like, man, and then I ended up just being like such a bad owner, right? Like it was just like, I didn't spend enough time with it. I didn't drive it enough. I didn't work on it enough. And then I was like, it has to be rehomed. There's got to be a better owner. And I got rid of it. And I'm kind of bummed. I've been really bummed out about it. And obviously the person I sold it to is doing way more with it than I did, so it's fine. But yeah, I and then because I have kids and so forth, so it's like I haven't spent a lot of time. I've been teetering into like the overlanding driving thing. So it's like I finally hit like some dirt trails for the first time a few years ago. I was like, I thought that's really cool. And then obviously with like one trail that I started going to a lot, there was a fire recently. It hasn't been reopened, so it's like now I'm bummed because there. It's like this kind of sucks. I need to find more time.
No, I think they could also relate to it too,
It's the
because
same for us. Like we're kind of, we're at this point now where we're trying to find ways to participate again. Because even though we're building and we're doing all this stuff and participating in our own way, we don't get to drive the cars as much as we would like to. We don't get to participate in events in the way that we want to. Like as a fan or as an enthusiast, we're always on the other side of the fence, much like you are. So our show experiences, our event experiences are like from a very different place. Like it's work for us. So we're trying to get back onto the other side of the fence and take some of this stuff in, but it's just so hard to find the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then when you do between, all the things that you're doing and you find like, or maybe I'm just a bad manager of time. Like, I get home and it's like, cool, I'm just going to like, one of those weekends where like, oh, we don't
Just want to chill.
Here, this is great. I'm just going to sit at home.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, how do I barely have time to be at home. And when I am at home, like I'm just I'm vegging out.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe I can venture back out more often.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Drag the family with me.
It's funny you mentioned the family thing because I just realized, and I'm like, oh yeah, the whole of last year I never went to a car show because I was like, I just have a new family, just got a kid and all that, and so many things have changed compared to before. And so I constantly this year I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do something of that constant reminder. But when you're in it, you're like you said, you're at home, it's a weekend, you're like, I just want to chill and just like sit down and just with the family.
you end up watching a lot of cartoons.
I actually learned a little bit about PRI leading up to our conversation today, and I found it really, really cool how you guys are like sort of like the legislative side of things and how you guys are helping to keep the racing industry not only existing but thrive and grow and go beyond the things that are already. I found that to be really fascinating. Like how is it that our listeners, people watching, can get involved in something like that through PRI? Like, because I think like with the growth of Formula D and all of this and how you're seeing it grow every single year, I believe there's a lot of people out there that truly want to see things like this thrive. We don't want to see it fall by the wayside, die. We want to see how can we all help? Like what can we do?
Because I don't
until it definitely grows. Like why I even thought to volunteer for some of these committees and so forth. Years ago, there's different ways of getting involved. One, becoming a member is the easiest way because then you're kind of tapped into the loop of all things information. If you are politically active, you can donate to our PAC, which then strategically supports policymakers that support policies that are pro the industry. Mm-hmm. You can volunteer if your company is already say like a SEMA member. You can volunteer your time to one of these various councils and networks depending on what category of business you're in. and bring that kind of volunteerism, to the table. I think, I think the legislative side is tricky, but is also really vital, because when you think about, racing, a lot of, pretty much what ends up on the street, whether it's stylistic or whether it's technology, starts at the racetrack. And if you have less and less racetracks, that means that's less and less racing. If there's less and less racing, there's less and less innovation. There's less and less innovation. Then there's less and less of that trickles down into what you have available, on the street for your car. And all that affects not just maybe the transfer of technology and sport and all that, but how does that, affect livelihoods of people that are involved, whether they're creating a product or marketing a product or putting the product to application. So there's a lot of, the ecosystem is a lot more interwoven and a lot more complex than maybe people outside of the RA racing world realizes.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because like before, like SEMA, when you see it, it looks like a big car show to most outside people looking in. And even our perception in the shop, people are like, they think you're going to show off a car and you're building a SEMA car. And like, that's kind of where the conversation ends. Whereas like, until we became SEMA members and PRI members, I don't think we really realized just how aggressively our thing is under attack, like constantly. So it's like, that's a pretty cool thing about it. Like, I wouldn't have been aware of it because I'm not out looking for it, but as I follow these newsletters and all these different things and all the sort of, like, we started participating more in like the programs that are at SEMA and seminars and all these type of things. And then you kind of get a better idea, just like, you guys are at war all the time.
Pretty wild.
Like, we're taking in all the fun stuff and it's like, yeah, you guys are awesome. You got SEMA cars and you're doing cool builds. But like, you guys are literally at war for us almost every single day. Because it's like constantly.
And that's what, we have to continue to work on that and let the community, the industry, even the member companies and the members know what we're doing. Everything from, like you said, education, seminars, workshops, to help you become a better, professional as an individual in the industry, to offer you opportunities, to help you as a business owner, and what tools and trends and information that's available, but also understanding like what we're doing behind the scenes to support that and to propagate that, to protect and promote and advocate for our industry to continue to be able to do what we do, is important. And we have to do our part in informing and educating more people, so that when the time comes or is needed, everything, as simple as like a letter writing campaign. Politicians and policymakers, that carries a weight when they know voters care about an issue, and that kind of goes on the top of the priority list, where it's like, oh, I have a couple things. I don't really hear much from this group here, but I hear a lot from this group here.
Yeah.
Or let me make sure I tackle this first before I get to this.
It's pretty amazing that you guys do all of this, because we've been hearing about it for a long time. Like, racetracks are closing and all of these things, and all these government legislations pretty much are just trying to shut down or trying to make it like motorsports in general just limited. But yeah, it's pretty cool that you guys are pretty much at war, like Tim said, every single day, like trying to make sure like that doesn't happen. And so regarding like racetracks closing, does that affect you guys? Like, how does that directly correlate to you guys?
Absolutely. I think, racetracks closing is that, because it's, and we have to tell the story of how that not just affects the industry, because it does, right? Like we were saying, the less racing that happens, the less innovation and even just the servicing of race cars and those businesses suffer in that region, that community.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as like, oh, it just gets transferred, to the next county or the next state. It's not that simple. So keeping tracks open and viable is really important. But there's also a part where, telling the story of how that plays into the community, people's livelihoods that are affected by that, but even kind of a, the community service of a track. And I think we don't do a good enough job of doing that. And I think we as a whole, as an industry, have to really kind of ramp that up where, you think about the community, you think about, hey, look, people talk about you moving into neighborhoods, public parks and all that kind of stuff because it's good for, the society as a whole, right? I don't think many people look at it that way. And I think, we obviously are biased. We look at, a racetrack in the community is like a park.
Yeah.
Right? It's like because it's a place of entertainment. It's a place you could take your family to. It's a place where young people can kind of stay off the streets because there's somewhere to go. It's a place where, when you go transit down to kind of the on the street stuff where, different racing series and different racing categories deal with it all the time, and things from, illegal racing and so forth. Like sometimes you need to have an outlet for them to go. So it's really hard to tackle, illegal racing, for example, when you don't really have any place to send people to.
Yeah.
So how do you curb that when, aside from punishment, there's some sort of, maybe not all people that do that, but there's part of it's fueled by some sort of entertainment factor, enthusiasm. So let's channel it somewhere else or to another location. So I think there's a kind of a public safety part in that as well. And so again, those things I feel are all affected by a loss of a racetrack in the community.
Yeah. So deeply interwoven. I mean, you can't iterate that more. So it's so broad spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also curious to know if, like, you were talking about like the illegal street racing, or even the favorite topic now, street takeover, of if that affects you guys, because we've been seeing so much of it. I feel like ever since, COVID was like the time when things exploded, but has it had any effect on you guys, especially with also the laws and all of these things being passed? I mean, does that what do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a necessarily a direct effect, but it does, right? So, imagine walking into the door of a policymaker that is not a car enthusiast, that doesn't really care or has passion for it, and you say, hey, look, we want to advocate for this XYZ. Policy. What if first comes to mind is, cars. Like there's sometimes there's that kind of that trigger where it's like the last thing that visually you see in your head are people doing street takeover. And so it's like you already have that person already walks into the conversation with you with some sort of like a
preconceived notion,
or you're like, whatever, you're a shop that specializes in particular type of car that they saw that is prevalent at a street takeover, and suddenly it's like, oh, do you do those? And you modify those cars that do that? Like, no, what, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that is almost as it's a start to the negative is if I don't know, if someone doesn't know about cars, they can't differentiate the difference between, say, like my previous world, right? Like somebody doing a donut and somebody drifting.
Yeah.
There's no different to them. There's
all the
it's
same. Yeah.
Because the car's kind of sideways and they're burning rubber and it's the same. And so the fear or the concern is that automatically they're going to say, "Oh yeah, oh, isn't that drifting?" No, no, it's not, right? Or, oh, when you say you're a car enthusiast and you go whatever, showing off your car, it's like, is that showing off your car? Like, like there's
The correlation is
yeah. So the ramifications of those kind of like bad apples, in society, in the community, yeah, has a negative effect, because then it puts puts us in a bad light. And for the predominant part of the industry that has no part in that, does not support any part of that, can and will be affected by that.
yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the association to it right away is like, that's the only reason these things are being built, is so you can go do this.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
"Oh, that is not the case at all."
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about it in the past, and it's like, I don't know anybody that's actually in the industry that supports any of that.
My earlier days in the industry, yeah, illegal street racing was a big issue. Kind of areas all over Southern California were known for that.
Yeah.
And there was, an attempt, a huge crackdown. How do you curb that? How do you stop that? Everything from, unfortunately, Irwindale Speedway has closed down. There were, hey, you're
crazy.
yeah, you get ticketed at a legal street race. You get to go to Irwindale for free. You're right. As a hey, let me show you how to do this legally. Let's get you off the street into the track. And so again, it was kind of like an outlet for that.
Yeah.
Granted, there, will everyone do that? No, but you're going to curb, some of it. And then again, the transition to like streets, like, so if I have a modified car, if I have a, lower car, like I'm going to get, you're going to get profiled and pulled over, and they're going to think that you're a illegal drag racer for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like, not, but I get it. I get that there's a huge issue. There's all kinds of people doing wrong. And as a result, other people are affected by it.
Yeah. So where do you see the whole, I'm like moving to the future of the motorsports industry in general, because we've seen a shift in EVs and all of this, like new legislation and laws about EVs, and we're never going to have gas cars in 2035 or something like that. And so like, how has PRI been able to deal with all of that, or like tell people, no, this is not going away, or is it going away? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the the legislation, the advocacy that we do, that our stance is that we're technology neutral. It's based off of what, yes, there's new tech, and that's fine. But it's based off of what the industry desires. So if, whatever, somebody feels that purple paint is more, popular than green paint, then so be it. Then use purple paint. We're not going to tell you how, what color paint is required.
Yeah.
And so, that's our stance, is to not have restrictions or mandates, but rather it be a kind of a free economy of choice.
Oh yeah, I just wasn't sure of what that looked like for you guys, just because of where the industry's heading and with all of the laws and things passed too, because I don't know if or how far the government rules and laws, because for example, like California, they said, I don't know if they've backed down on the rule, but no like gas powered new cars for sale after like 35, is it?
I think they backed that up.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I wasn't curious if that was going to have a direct impact on you guys and what you can show at motorsports events and all of these things, or if that directly is related or associated, but yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, again, we also tackle it kind of two parts, right? Our DC office that really advocates and kind of lobbies for different policies, kind of tactically attack it different ways. One is federally, where like national policies, and then by state. And so, we'll have, we'll address issues as they pop up. And so in the issue of California, that's a state issue. And so we're obviously looking, at that and trying to tackle that. We've obviously, with the change of administration, doing kind of more support of the industry from a federal level.
Yeah.
So we're those are things that we're definitely always working on.
Yeah, that's awesome. But it's just been so much fun to chat with you. Like, it's been really cool to hear everything I'm sure it's not even a fraction of everything that you guys are doing. And like, you've like, literally, we should be like, oh, thank you. Of just bringing motorsports to the eyes of so many people, seeing the bigger picture. And it's not about you, it's about the community. Like, that part is really cool. Like, that part of stuck with me. So
yeah, definitely that fan focused sort of mentality that is super admirable.
We the whole thing.
Love that very much.
Yes. So I appreciate
I appreciate the conversation, and if we ever want to get into stories, I got plenty of those.
Dude, we'll have to have you on again.
Yes, I'm very, very curious for sure. Like, it's been so much fun. And so for people that want to reach you, how can they do that?
I'm always on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook so much anymore. So just very simple, at Jim Liaw. Okay, that's it.
Awesome.
Hit me up.
Yeah, and if you liked this video and you want to see more, check out Jim Liaw's Instagram. Follow us, Modify with Trick Factory Customs. Trick Factory Customs on most social media platforms, and we will see you guys later. Bye.